So let me get the screen a little bit larger here, and we can run through the presentation. Hopefully everybody at this point can now see the screen and see where we're at and see the actual PowerPoint presentation online. So hopefully at this point everybody is able to see that. So okay, so the actual presentation is going to be about powerful tips and uses for your SEO campaign. It's going to be going through about 30 slides, so I'm actually going to go through and try to spend about less than half a minute on each slide so that we can wrap this up in 15, 20 minutes, something like that, and open up the line for any questions that anybody might have. So, so to begin, what we're ultimately going to go through is how to actually not only set up and work with PowerPoint SEO campaign, but we're actually going to make sure that everything is in alignment with what is needed from Google's algorithm and the latest and greatest trends that are out there. So first, let's kind of do a campaign review. One of the things that we kind of discuss for all of our clients here at Paper Street is making sure that we do quarterly reviews. One of the biggest reasons we talk about this is that there are search algorithm changes that change quarterly, if not even more than that come from Google. And not only that, but the phrases that we're targeting and the keyword phrases that ultimately every SEO campaign is built around can change. There are things that happen in the news. There's things that actually happen in everyday life that affect how much or how many times people are looking and searching for certain phrases versus not. So it's something that it's worth taking a look at. I would highly recommend that at least quarterly we review what's going on in a campaign. And by that I just mean not looking at reports and looking at rankings, but looking at the factors that go into a campaign and seeing if anything has changed. So. Concentrating on the importance of the campaign, obviously, just as I mentioned, making sure that we pay attention to algorithm updates, new technologies, any sort of new features that are out there that we can apply so that you don't get left behind. Internet marketing is becoming exponentially more competitive within the last, I would say, even 2 years. And so, there's a huge importance to just kind of stay on top of what needs to be stayed on top of. So one really great way to actually pay attention to algorithm changes, because a lot of people aren't tuned in directly with Google as opposed to just using it for a search engine, is going to the website moz.com. And in there's actually a link, as you can see in the top URL, that actually says Google algorithm change, and they report every time there is an update and every time we need to pay attention to something that Google has updated. A lot of the times that are in there, they're incremental and small versioning updates, but sometimes there are big wholesale updates that need to get applied to or paid attention to for an entire campaign. Very good resource. Okay, keyword focus. Many of our clients that we go through for a campaign, one of the biggest factors that they talk about and that they want to look at is going after a keyword phrase that is casting a really wide net. And one of the things that we talk to all of our clients about is making sure that you can keep your campaign concentrated as opposed to diluting it. And by that I mean, don't cast that wide of a net. The more honed in and the more specific you can make the phrases within your campaign, ultimately the better that it is. The reason for this, which we'll get into later on, is really about content. At this point, Google's algorithm also, if I had to sum it up, obviously it's not this, I guess, honed in, or the word that I'm looking for is it's not this cut and dry, basically, but 60% of their algorithm is absolutely about content. 40% of it is about the amount of links and backlinks that the authority that you actually have leading to your site. So relevancy is about 60%, 40% is about authority. So really what that means is we need to keep focused on what we're actually targeting from a SEO perspective, from an internet marketing perspective. Many of the phrases that we target, we want to cast this wide net. And by that, let me use an example. So for example, if somebody was a personal injury law firm and they were going after the general phrase of injury or personal injury, that casts a huge wide net. I mean, if you were saying that you were in Miami as a location, for example, and you went after injury, that could include anything from being a dog bite lawyer to a car accident lawyer to an ATV accident lawyer. It's not as honed in as what it really might be. That isn't to say that you can't go after that, but you just have to realize it is that much more competitive when you cast that wide of a net. If you are able to take this cathartic look at your firm and your company and say, this is exactly what we hone in on, this is exactly who we are, and the niche or the niche that you specifically target in, the more precise and honed in you can make that. That really helps out from a content and relevancy standpoint, because you don't have to then prove to Google and write pages about being a dog bite lawyer if you're not necessarily a dog bite lawyer. So one of the other things that we go through, and as I mentioned earlier, is that averages change. What that means is the global monthly searches that are out there that people look up for a certain phrase, those things change. For example, a really big example that we had seen here is with bankruptcy outside of Detroit. One of our clients is a Detroit bankruptcy lawyer, a law firm, and wasn't a massively sought after phrase, but when the entire city of Detroit filed for bankruptcy, that search phrase, that search term became a massively sought after search term. So as to my point, there are things that happen in topical items, news items that actually can affect how often things are sought after. So it's definitely worth taking a look at and making sure that those changes are there. The other factor, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, is local factors. So again, as I mentioned previously, there are some things when we talk about geographic location and when we talk about casting a really wide net, the more honed in we can also make that geographic location and your local factors, the more honed in your campaign can be. So if we, again, are saying, let's say we're in Miami, but we're truly not in Miami. We're actually outside of Miami, and we might be in a small town like Miami Lakes or Miramar, we might want to consider targeting those terms and those phrases simply because of the fact that we have a little bit of a local listing proximity to those locations, and that actually can help the campaign as opposed to casting such a wide net and encompassing all of an entire city. So to reference some things directly here at PaperStreet, here's an example of some global monthly searches for keyword phrases that we target. So we actually go after, for example, the very first one, law firm web design. We see that there is about 260 searches, exact searches. That means people are looking up that exact phrase 260 times a month. So with the analogy I like to use for this, and we'll look at this actually in the slide below, is a mountain range. When we look at the phrases that we're targeting, and we say a phrase like law firm web design or attorney SEO or the one underneath that, lawyer internet marketing, we can see that the most highly sought after phrase is law firm web design by about 20 searches per month. We also see that there's a competition level of 97%. And what that means is the competition means basically how many people are also going after that phrase. And that can be from an organic level. That can be how many people are actually getting ads for that, so from a pay-per-click, from a Google AdWords perspective. But really, Google's looking at it and how many people are actually targeting certain phrases and what they're actually going in after and the competition. The analogy that I use, as I was speaking of, is I compare this to a mountain range. And I basically say, in this mountain range, if we add a couple zeros to the end of these actual monthly search terms, we could say there's a mountain that is 2,600 feet high for law firm web design. For us to get to the top of that mountain, to get to the pinnacle of it, is a high climb. I mean, it means we have to climb 2,600 feet. The mountain peak that's below that in this range, in this mountain range of attorney SEO, is 2,400 feet. That's 200 feet less. It's a little bit easier for us to get to the top of that. The analogy, to keep going on that analogy, the competition level that I use for that is I basically say that it's the grade or the slope, the steepness of that mountain. So if we look at something that is like law firm web design, that's a 97% competition. That's a really steep mountain. If it was 30%, then the grade of that mountain would be at like 30 degrees. We could essentially walk up to the top of that mountain. Unfortunately, we don't see this here. So ideally, in a perfect world, what we would love to see is a highly sought-after phrase with a really low competition level. Generally speaking, that doesn't happen. The more highly sought-after it is, the more competitive it is. But if we're able to find that, and referencing what I was mentioning earlier about niche practices and honing in and concentration of the keyword phrases, if we're able to do that, sometimes we are able to see that, and it can really help out a campaign. So here's my mountain range analogy I was using, thinking of the law firm web design example as being the top of this mountain range and the other ones being the smaller peaks. That's really the way that we need to look at an SEO campaign and keep our objective and our sights on the top bigger mountain range, but if we can get to some of the smaller peaks and to the top of some of the smaller mountain ranges, that we can start getting a return on investment of SEO while maintaining the goal to try to get to the main peak. On-page optimization factors. There is a greater need for direct matches at this point. And what that means is when we talk about a phrase like law firm web design, we want to make sure that that is utilized within the content of the website. As I mentioned earlier, 60% of the entire algorithm of Google is really all about relevancy. That means having keyword phrases in amongst your content. You need to have references to these phrases. So one of the ways that Google does this, and one of the ways we comply with Google by doing this, is by having it a minimum of 4 times. And that means in your title tag, which is in the very top of your browser, within your meta description, which is actually when you Google something or when you look something up on a search engine, you actually see it underneath the actual link. It gives you a small description of what that page is about. It should be introduced in there. It should then be introduced into the headline of a page and then in amongst the body content at least once. So that's obviously contingent on how much content you have on a page, and you don't want it to seem forced, but that really is complying ultimately with what Google wants. So also underneath that, we talk about having the pages for which you are targeting. That basically means if you're targeting law firm web design and you're actually targeting something related to a phrase itself, you should absolutely have that page on your site. It almost sounds a little bit silly to even say that, but if you're going after something, you should have that page on your site. If you're talking about being a Philadelphia employment lawyer, you should have a page on your site that talks about employment law within Philadelphia. It's really that simple. Last thing is word count. So we need to make sure, again, complying with Google's algorithm, at this point they want a minimum of 500 words per page. It doesn't matter what page that's on. So if it's on a sub-page, a core page, if it's on a blog post, whatever the case might be, in order to comply, Google's basically saying, if this is your company, if this is your business, you should be able to at least contextually write 500 words, and you should be able to do that fairly easily in order for that to be considered. The only exception to that is the homepage, and as a matter of fact, with the homepage, they want more. They want a minimum of about 750 words. But every other page within your site should have a minimum of 500 words. Here's an example of how we at Paper Street do exact matches and direct matches. So this is using Google Chrome, and we did Control F or Edit Find, and we can actually search for a phrase. Everybody can do this. And in the top right there, I have put in the phrase law firm web design or website design. You can see our title tag, which is in the top of the browser, it says law firm web design. You can see in our headline there, it's law firm web design, and marketing. And then as we scroll down on that page, you'll see that it's within the body content. And then behind the scenes, the only one behind the scenes is the meta description. But it's also, of course, introduced in there. This is what needs to happen for every website that is involved in internet marketing. Blogging. We need to stress the importance of blogging. Just as I mentioned before, 60% of the algorithm is about relevancy, making sure that your website is relevant content. The way that you can do that is by blogging. Most people don't know, but every time you add a blog post to your website, it actually adds a page to your website. So if you were to blog every single day for 300, for an entire year, you're going to have 365 new pages added to your site. Not only does that make you a bigger target to be found within search engines, but you have this amazing opportunity to introduce keyword phrases in amongst that content. So referencing what we mentioned just a second ago, word count, that includes blogs too. We need to have a minimum of 500 words within each blog post that we do. The relevancy, we need both, in keywords and in pages within the site. So what that means is, again, we need to introduce the keyword phrases in amongst the content of the site, but we also need to make sure that those pages actually exist. If we're, again, as a hypothetical example, talking about Philadelphia employment law firm, we need to make sure that if we reference that in a blog, we can link back to an employment page discussing how the firm is in Philadelphia. So it's really trying to make these connections and prove to Google that you are who you say that you are. Blogging, one of the biggest things and one of the biggest questions I get about this is how often and how frequent should you be blogging? The default answer, the one point that I like to make is the more that you can do it, the better that it ultimately can be. Just as I referenced, if you can do a single blog post every single day for an entire year, you're going to have 365 new pages to your site. But one of the ways that I would highly recommend it is, as long as you keep a beat, keep a rhythm, keep a steady pace of blogging, Google likes that. Google's an algorithm. It's a computer. It's a system. It's spiders that crawl the web. If there is no rhythm to where you're posting, if you did 10 blogs at once and 2 months later did 3 and then 2 months after that did 10, there's no rhythm to that. And ultimately what you want to have is post one blog post every day, or one blog post every week, or one blog post every month. But be frequent in that. Can maintain a rhythm of how often you do that. Lastly, in a blog, we want to talk about proper categorization. And what that means is don't just arbitrarily post a blog out there and put keyword phrases in it and then just put it in a general blog forum. Say what this blog applies to. Say, for example, if you're a personal injury law firm, that this subject is not only about, or this particular blog post is not only about personal injury, but it's also tagged with a phrase like perhaps dog bites, or perhaps car accidents, or perhaps motorcycle accidents. So the more specified and specific you can make those blog posts, the more that it actually assists SEO. Because when Google crawls the web, they say, well, okay, not only is this blog post about personal injury, and I can see in the content that they're referencing motorcycle accidents, but now I look in the categorization, and it's underneath a section of the website that actually talks about it being categorized within the motorcycle blogs or motorcycle accident blog posts that we've done previously. Here's an example of us doing this for one of our clients. The top thing is, or the top post is them referencing, as you can see, highlighted in the second line, immigration attorneys. That tagline, that phrase right there, New Jersey immigration attorneys, that actually is a keyword phrase that they're targeting. You can see that's actually tagged under and categorized under their immigration section. The post is about being New Jersey immigration attorneys. It's in the immigration categorization. Makes sense. The one below it, you can see, is actually posted in family law, but you can see the title of it is actually about divorce and your children's education. The entire blog post is about divorce, ultimately, but it's in the section of family law. It just makes sense for proper categorization, not only from a human level and from a search level. Local factors. Let's talk about being found locally, being found for the listing that you want to be found for within the city that you're actually located in. This is huge now, actually, to be honest. It's one of the biggest factors that Google talks about that you really want to pay attention to. Really what it means is when you're setting up or having a firm set up your local listing, you want to make sure that you're properly categorized. And what that means is Google only gives us a certain amount of categorizations that we can pick from. And when we're actually setting that up, you can actually have this opportunity to select 5 categories that you fit under. if we're able to pick something, or a firm that's setting up an internet marketing campaign for you is able to get as honed in as what we spoke about earlier, to get narrowed down in a phrase or a topic, they should absolutely do that. Google likes to see that you're just not a law firm, or that you're not just a veterinarian's office, but perhaps you're a law firm that specializes in criminal defense or probate. If you can select that categorization, it must be done. It should be done, and it helps your local listing. Having a physical address in the city. This is a huge topic, and I can absolutely help anyone that needs more information on local listings. But the more honed in and precise your physical address is to the city in which you're targeting, which also references the bottom point, which is the proximity of the address to the area of interest. But ultimately, the more honed in you can be to that area, the more likelihood that you're going to get authority from Google to rank within that area. That doesn't mean that you can't rank within there if you're on the outskirts, but it's going to be a little bit tougher. The people that are located within a zip code, within a physical address, within an area that they're specifically targeted already have a little bit of a preferential treatment to be there. Getting verified local listings. Honestly, what this means is, and one of the questions I get is, how can Google prove that I'm actually there? How do I know that I can't just set up a virtual office or set up an actual different office in another location just because I want to rank there? The way that Google does this at this point in time is they actually send out physical postcards to those addresses. They will not send a postcard to a P.O. box or anything like that. It actually has to be a real legitimate physical address. And what they do is they send out a postcard to that verification PIN numbers that are on there, and that's Google's way of proving that not only did you receive it in this location, but you have the verification PINs that can prove that we can verify this local listing. Lastly, and I know the last point was the proximity one, but that obviously references the physical address in the city. The final point that I'd like to make in this is really having your exact address on the website. And by exact address, all of your addresses need to match. And as silly as that sounds, it means if your local listing actually, from a Google perspective or from a white pages or from a yellow pages, lists your suite number as a STE dot whatever your suite number is, that needs to be consistent throughout. I can't stress this enough. So if there's something where an actual name of a street is spelled out and it says, let's just say 219 Southwest, and it actually spells out Southwest in the local listing as opposed to SW, then you actually need to have that spelled out on your website. It needs to match. Google's trying to make a connection, and if there is anything off in that exact address connection, they're not going to give you the verification that you need. So that must be done. Here is an example of some things that we can do, and this is, again, something I can talk about a little bit in depth. But here's an example of one of the things that we can do as an assistance, because one of the questions we get is, what if I have multiple office locations and we're a firm or an veterinarian's office or a medical office or something, and we have multiple different office locations. There are ways to actually help out and verify all of those listings and also target areas that you might not be exactly in. And one of the ways to do this is actually called city pages. And as you can see, here's an example with one of our clients where we developed this link on the bottom of their footer, which actually shows all of their city pages. You roll over those, and when you click on those city pages, it actually goes to a unique content page that speaks about the information of that city. So in Hackensack, for this client, they deal with criminal defense lawyers. If we look back at the other cities that they're targeting, and we talk about Haddon Heights or Vineland, that information about criminal defense lawyers is going to be different. They have different offices, different locations, different content for it, and that content needs to be unique. You're basically, again, proving to Google that you have an office location and unique information within that location. Social media. In short, social media is the light version of blogging. Really, what I mean by that, every time you do a blog, every time you're putting something into the website, into the world, you can basically take that consolidated Cliff Notes version of blogging and put it out to the social media world. You can even link it back to your blog from the social media world. But for a lot of people that say to me, I don't know what to talk about on social media, I don't know what to reference, I always say reference what you're talking about in your blog, or answer a question, or speak to somebody online how you would if you were explaining this to somebody that doesn't know what you do for a living. It should be a conversational sort of subject matter that goes out there. And really the ultimate point about it is you're establishing branding of who you are. You're using social media as a soapbox to cast out this information, to put it out to the world and say, here's what I am, I do exist, now find me, link back to me. And it sounds a little bit silly also to say this, but they're called social media networks. It's literally about networking. And by that I mean, don't just post something out there and expect that there's going to be link backs or people are going to immediately go to your website. Engage users, engage people in conversations. Use social media like Facebook or Twitter as a search engine. You can go on to Twitter and search for a phrase. So for example, let's say you do criminal defense in New Orleans, and you're So if anyone is still on the line here, our internet connection, I believe, has been reestablished. So I'm going to actually see if the actual presentation is still active. So I'm not sure if everybody is still available online. Actually unmuting everybody at the moment to see if anybody's still here and able to participate. Okay, so I think we're actually back online and we're good to go. So what I'm going to do is actually start right where we're at again from social media and going through. Sorry about that delay. So where we were was, making sure that we actually literally network and that we actually go through and, communicate with the people that are online trying to communicate with us. So really what the analogy I use for this is it's almost like your phone ringing in your office. You wouldn't ignore it. You wouldn't just let it go, or somebody knocking on your door. If they're doing that, you should participate in a conversation. Here's some really good examples of some of our clients that have actually set up social media properly. They have a lot of likes. They actually post as well. And as you can see from their tweets and the information that's up, you can actually see that they post quite frequently and engage anybody that's online. So the few last factors I'll run through, videos. We want to make sure that videos are being used. It's a Google product, as YouTube is a Google product, I should say. And what we want to do is try to reinforce their own products. And nowadays, the way that, ironically, internet connections work, and I say that ironically because ours just dropped out, but the way that internet connections work, the download speed for watching videos is phenomenal at this point. So everybody should be setting up a YouTube channel. Google takes videos extremely seriously at this point. As you can see by this point below, videos are 53 times more likely to be clicked on than content. So it's definitely worth putting information out there. Google obviously gave everybody an opportunity within YouTube to make sure that your your videos are relevant and that they have authority. And by that, what we mean is you can actually set up videos properly so that they can be optimized properly. So we can actually go through and make sure that in videos that your description, that the titles of the videos, all of that has information that can be set up for proper relevancy and authority. So here's an example for one of our clients in the way that we've done that. So not only does it say, obviously, who the client is, and we have an about page that we can click on within this video that actually has a lot of keyword phrases and links back to this client's website, but as you can see from the actual links within there and the title tags, for example, if we look at the first one, it'll say Seth Bloom, New Orleans traffic ticket. That actually says traffic ticket lawyer or law firm or attorney or something related to that phrase. The one directly underneath it, New Orleans DUI attorney. These are all relevant ways to actually become relevant for the keyword phrases that you're targeting. Google Analytics and Webmaster Tools. This, honestly, each one of these is its own webinar in and of itself. It's extremely in-depth, but really what it means is use these tools. They're free tools from Google, and what they do is analytics allows you to look at the user data that is actually associated with your website. You can see how many pages are being clicked on. You can see what pages are viewed. You can see the activity of users using your site, viewing your site. You absolutely should be using this if you're not. There's a great blog post that we did referencing analytics, which is, as you can see, www.paperstreet.com/blog/5834. All of our blogs are numbered. But if you look at that blog post, you can actually see how to set up and how to properly read the information in Google Analytics. Webmaster Tools, what that does is that actually looks at improvements for your site. So Google will scan your site and basically say, here are errors or warnings or issues that you need to be aware of if your website doesn't comply with what they want. You need to pay attention to this because you need to make sure that everything is in good standing. Again, our blog is with the number of 6080, and we have a really good blog post that actually talks about using Webmaster Tools and how to set that up. Here's an example of a Google Analytics stat. You can see just, this is what we want to see. It's an upward trend throughout the month. How many views are actually on there. You can see the page visits. You can see how many unique visitors are coming to your website, how many pages, how long they're on each pages, et cetera, et cetera. So you definitely want to pay attention to this information. And this is a screenshot of Webmaster Tools. You're basically saying this is good. There's no errors. You can see underneath where it says crawl errors. There are no errors dictated, I guess, detected. Sorry, I was having trouble saying. There are no errors detected in the last 90 days, which is phenomenal. You're not getting any error messages. and you can see the search queries too, how many people are looking at your site and what's going on. Definitely important, definitely worth learning about, and definitely worth looking into. Google Authorship is basically being set up on your website. Google sees, and all the search engines see, every website as a publishing platform. They see it as you have content to say, you have content to talk about, you're publishing this information out there. Who is the face, who is the publisher of this published content? So not only is it the content that's on there, but who is the author of that content? So one of the ways that you can do that is actually setting up what's called Google Authorship, and it's one of the latest and greatest things in internet marketing, and sometimes you might have seen it when you do a search for a phrase and somebody's image shows up next to actually a description and or a link that's on there. And that's Google Authorship. That's saying I am the author of this website and its content. So the difference between authorship and being a publisher is exactly that. Google, as what I mentioned earlier, Google sees your website as published content, and it's saying who is the author of this published content. So your website and your website developers should set that up properly for you. They should be able to basically say your website is a publishing platform, which is considered a publisher tag, and then there's an author underneath that, and that's also a tag for authorship. Basically, as you can see also underneath that, more users are likely to click on authorship than other top ranked sites that have it. You have a one or two rankings, or your competitors have number one or two rankings in Google, and you're the third one down, and you actually have authorship. Statistics are showing that people are more likely to click on that authorship under the third ranking than the first two that rank above it. And lastly, your author rank. And what that means is, to be honest, to be blunt and candid about it, basically means a popularity contest. When you set up your authorship and you actually set up a authorship identity under a Google profile account, which is just like setting up a Google Plus page, but it's specifically not a page for the company, but a page for you, an author, a profile. The more people that you have that have validity to that page that you have set up that talks about who you are as an author, the more likely that the more that helps your author rank. So that might be done by doing a lot of posts, having a lot of posts copied, commented on, and reposted. It also might include having a lot of people within your circle on Google. The more popular you are, the higher your author rank becomes. As you can see here, here's a post by Pete Boyd or Paper Street. You can see his authorship is set up right there, and you can see underneath Peter Boyd's circles, he has 589 people within his Google Plus circle. That just kind of speaks to his online popularity. So the more people you have, the more that helps, and the more that actually helps the ranking of your authorship. Lastly, one way that you can do this too, and I know this is a little hard to see, but once you actually set this up and you have your development team set this up, you can actually show that the website of Paper Street, as you can see that we put in this URL, actually shows that this authorship is working and that it's set up properly. It's another way to get verified from Google, and that definitely needs to be done. Only a few more slides here. Paid backlinks. Really what this means is on Google's latest algorithm update for May the 22nd, there have been a few since then, but that one in particular basically put this value on the links that you're getting versus quantity of links. So what that means is you have this opportunity then to look at certain highly ranked backlinks that lead to your website, other websites that lead to your website that can assist in rankings. And there are directories now that are occupying the top slots of Google ranks. So sometimes, particularly if you're a law firm, you'll see that FindLaw or that other things like super lawyers might actually rank above what the actual firms are that are searching for this. That's Google putting the importance of these directories. If they're paid and they're worth buying into, it might be worth doing. The analogy I use to that is it's the booster rockets to the main rocket of the campaign. I mean, it helps push it above. It helps get it off the ground. So it might be worth doing, and it might be worth considering to have a budget for that. And then some of these directories or some of these paid backlinks include things like directories, press releases, and article submissions so that you can actually be relevant for a whole bunch of different terms as opposed to just getting a backlink to your site. AdWords, the difference between AdWords and pay-per-click, setting that up, and AdWords, I should say AdWords and organic campaign, it's really 80% versus 20% of the campaign. Really what that means is still to this day, 80% of users are more likely to click on organic searches than 20% are to click on pay-per-click or Google Ads. The way we see it here at Pay-Per-Click is why not buy into 100% of search results in internet marketing? So it's really, do you want to go after everything or just only a segment of it? Obviously we would recommend that you go after it all. The difference with AdWords and pay-per-click is that what it means is once you buy in analytics, and you actually set up a campaign, you can actually get that campaign to rank almost immediately if you have the budget to put toward it. Really, the way that is the more money you can put towards an ad campaign, the more likely it is to rank higher. So every ad and every ad campaign actually costs money to click on it, hence the phrase pay-per-click. And the more money you can actually allocate for that budget, the better that it ultimately can be. And it has an immediate effect. You can start ranking really high. Again, budget can win out. That's ultimately what that means. Also, the difference between organic and pay-per-click is that you can basically pause the pay-per-click campaign. You can stop it at any point in time, and then if you won a wonderful case or had a lot of clients come into your veterinarian's office or something like that, you can basically start that campaign right away if the budget allowed for it. You can unpause it and begin it right away. Organic SEO doesn't necessarily work like that. It's more of a vested interest. It's more like stocks where you want to buy into something and then have it actually come to fruition and really kind of move it along so that you can see that progression. And lastly, for AdWords, a really good way to look at that is monitoring your click-through rate. And what that means is if you do set up a campaign, the click-through rates are how often people are actually clicking on a campaign, clicking on those ads, and how often they're coming to fruition. You can see whether or not those ads are worth it and whether or not you want to maintain that campaign or put more money towards it. So it's something really important to take a look at. This just shows the difference here for the difference between ads versus organic searches. So the ones highlighted in red are actually ads. And that pretty much wraps up the entire presentation. So sorry again for the technical delays that we had there, and I'm going to actually unmute everybody. Hopefully that'll work. And this will hopefully allow us to ask for any questions or concerns that anybody might have. So the floor is open if anybody has any questions. And see if anybody else is there and has any questions at all. Okay. If not, then ultimately this will conclude the campaign review of powerful tips for your SEO campaign. And if anybody has any questions or concerns along the way or thinks of something later on, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. You can email me directly, which is alex@paperstreet.com, or please don't hesitate to give us a call. Phone number is 954-523-2181. Thank you so much for attending.